Welcome everyone! Yesterday I covered that amazing king hunt game of Wei Yi, but you'd be missing out on something equally amazing if I didn't follow that game up with this one. This is Short vs Timman from 1991, and this game includes I guess the most famous king walk ever, so I thought it's really fitting to show this game right after Wei Yi's. Let's not waste any time. Short had white and opened with e4. And here on move 1, black already played a rare move. Knight to f6, the Alekhine's defense. That's a rare guest on the highest level at least, because white can get lots of space, but that's not the whole story. After e5, really the only move to punish black, and knight to d5, indeed white gained space, but white at the very least will have to play d4 as well to support the e-pawn. Often white actually plays c4 and sometimes f4 as well, which clearly gives white a huge amount of space, but it will also mean that white falls behind in development. Also, white's pawns may turn out to be weak, so white has to take care as well. Anyway, on with the game. d4, d6, black challenges white's pawn center, and here short selected knight to f3. As mentioned, c4 and after knight to b6 going f4 was also a possibility, but this move makes a lot of sense as well. White is happy with the center as it is and just plays natural developing move, and it also supports the pawns. g6, logical, black hopes to put further pressure on the white pawns with bishop to g7. And here, bishop to c4 was played. On e2 the bishop would only make the e-pawn harder to defend, and this also develops with a gain of time. Knight to b6, bishop to b3, bishop to g7, continuing development. And now white opted for queen to e2. White can do other things, he can go knight to g5 or a4 as well, but this is definitely a solid choice. Knight to c6 came next, and now you can see the struggle really revolves around the e5 pawn. If white can keep the pawn there, then black's bishop on g7 will be blocked, but if black can force white to take on d6, then black can have an equal game. White castles, which is important because white wants to cover the e-pawn with the rook. Black castled as well. h3, very important, white cannot allow bishop to g4 and lose the fight over the e5 pawn. And now a5 was played. Black cannot put more pressure on e5 right now. White is pretty much forced to play a4 here. Going a3 is not good, because after a4, bishop to a2, black will trade on e5, play knight to d4, attacking the queen and the knight, so a knight trade. But now black threatens the e-pawn, and after rook to e1, rook to a5, the pawn is just too weak. So a4 instead, and I guess black can claim he gained control over the b4 square, even though white also gained control over b5. Now black decided to trade on e5, that's to open the d file and then trade some more minor pieces. White took back, then knight to d4, which was traded. Now the pawn needs protecting, so rook to e1, and here Timman played e6. Which does prevent white from playing e6, but it blocks in the bishop. Maybe bishop to d7 was better, and after knight to c3, put the bishop on c6. And if white goes knight to b5, attacking c7, then trade. And after c6, queen to e2, plant the knight on d5, that does look pretty solid. Instead, e6 was played, then knight to d2. And again, maybe black should have played bishop to d7 here as well. Instead he went knight to d5, intending b6 and bishop to b7. But this is very time consuming, and as you'll see, white now has the time to get a dangerous initiative on the king side. Knight to f3 came first. The queen has to move. Then queen to e4. Now if black doesn't act quickly, then white will go queen to h4, bishop to h6 and knight to g5 with a crushing attack. Therefore Timman played queen to b4, actually hoping that short will win a pawn. because after e d5, queen d5, black has bishop to e6, and black would have decent drawing chances there. Short wasn't tempted by that, however, and went bishop to c4, just blocking out the queen. The knights drop back to b6, now the bishop is hanging, therefore b3. Again, white doesn't want to trade queens, and he accepts the damaged pawn structure to keep the attack alive. Black did take the bishop. Pawn takes. Then rook to e8, allowing the queen to drop back to f8 if needed. Rook to d1, claiming the open file and preventing bishop to d7. Queen to c5. Sometimes the queen can be trapped after bishop to a3, so Timman just avoids that in advance. Queen h4, ready for the attack on the king side. White doesn't have to worry about the e-pawn, by the way, because after bishop takes pawn, white has bishop to e3, and black will lose the bishop after queen e7, the queen trade, and knight takes bishop, so black would drop a piece. Timman knew that, so he just continued with b6, bishop e3 anyway, queen to c6, a good move. Now black wants to set up a battery with the queen and bishop, which would stop white from attacking with knight to g5. Bishop to h6, planning to trade black's important defender. Black shouldn't take that, because after queen takes bishop b7, white has rook to d4, and black will be losing after rook to h4. Therefore bishop to h8, but now short played to rook to d8, and black's position is already very bad. There's a big threat now. White wants to play knight to d4, and after the queen moves, the rook on e8 will be hanging. Timman solved that with bishop to b7. Now knight to d4 would result in mate on g2. Rook from a to d1, gaining control of the d file. Again, white has a big threat. If allowed, white would play queen e7 here. Now just to show you what would happen, let's say black would take on a4. Then queen to e7. Now white would like to take on a8 and bring the other rook to d8 with a fatal pin. Therefore bishop takes knight. And after pawn takes back, queen to c6, guarding both rooks. But then white still has a killer move, bishop to g5. And white is now ready to play rook from 1 to d7, and it's game over. White does have to guard d8 first, because if rook from 1 to d7 right away, then black can just take that, and black would be winning. Anyway, that's why queen to e7 is a threat. Bishop to g7 was played. If white goes queen e7 now anyway, then black can just ignore that and take the bishop. But now, yet another great move, rook from a to d7. Now white threatens with bishop takes g7, and after king takes queen f6 check and a quick checkmate. Therefore rook to f8, but black is very much losing already at this point. Also not good enough would be queen to e4, hoping to trade queens, because of this cool move, rook takes f7. The king cannot take the rook because of rook d7 check and a swift checkmate, therefore bishop to h8, but then bishop to f4, threatening with queen h7 mate, so g5, but then for example queen to g4, and white can just go rook takes pawn or rook from d to d7 next, and black is collapsing. Instead, Timman went rook to f8. Here short did trade the bishops, and brought the second rook to d4. Now black always has to worry about a possible rook to g4 or rook to h4. Black played rook from a to e8. Black would like to play bishop to c8 to kick the white rook, but he cannot do that right away because of queen f6 check, and after king to g8, rook takes f7, and black will get mated on g7 or after rook d8 check if black takes on f7. Therefore rook from a to e8 first, queen f6 check was next, king to g8, and now it's very clear how much black suffers because white controls the open file. His own rooks are very passive and he cannot trade them off, and besides controlling the open file, the white rooks also put pressure sideways, in this case along the 7th rank. Short played h4, and it's actually already too late for black to go bishop to c8. If black tries bishop c8 now anyway, Then white can just advance his h-pawn, and after pawn takes actually go rook g4 check, because after takes, the other rook just takes its place and mate will come very soon. Because of that, Timman played h5 to stop white's pawn from advancing. But you know what? White doesn't even need the pawn to deliver checkmate. And here you'll see why this game is so famous. Instead of the pawn, Short decided to use his king to help deliver the mate. This is probably the most famous king march ever, and it's of course an ingenious and a daring idea. It's also more or less a necessity actually, because the white knight cannot move because of the mate threat on g2, but nevertheless it's a brilliant plan. It really doesn't matter what black tries at this point. Timman went rook to c8, the king stepped up, the rook went back to e8, black is just waiting for the end. The king marched further, and after black tried bishop to c8 anyway, Short could just ignore that, play king to g5, and Timman resigned. Why did he resign? If he had tried king to h7, stopping the white king, then there is rook takes pawn check, and after rook takes, queen f7 check, the king is forced back, and the white king can assist in a checkmate after all. A very cool finish to an amazing game. The Alekhine's defense is a risky choice at the top level anyway, but especially after Short took control of the d-file, because Timman's position just got extremely passive, and that gave white the opportunity to get his kingside initiative. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this game as much as I did. More great games are coming soon. You can check out the playlist for more great games in the meantime. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching Chess Student and take care.